What up gamers, I'm Jason and today on Dice & Dragons, I have something a little different for you today. I will be reviewing the Rising Sun comic book published by CMON Games and Guillotine Games. So this is volume 1 from their comic book Kickstarter. Hopefully there will be some more comic Kickstarters in the future. I have yet to read the others that were included. I'm starting off with Rising Sun. One of the reasons is that, well, I do love the game. It wasn't getting played, so it has moved on from the collection. That 3-player count was just a little too challenging for Julie and me, and I was curious if I was going to keep the comic book. Now, this comic book is written by Ron Mars and David Rodriguez with art by Martin Coccolo. So how is this review going to work? Well, I'm going to talk about the comic book in general, just the setting, the overall setup, and some of the characters. And then I'm going to break it down into a more spoiler-filled review of the book. Now, you're going to have some timestamps down below. So if you just want to hear the general overview, well, it's coming up very shortly. You can just keep watching. Or if you want to jump right into the spoilers, you may do that as well. So let's talk about Rising Sun, the comic book. The setting for this is that the kami have disappeared. There is a threat that surpasses all of the 7 clans. Therefore, the champions of the 7 clans must band together and take on the forces of evil that now threaten all of feudal Japan. So you do have monsters that are running rampant, like dragons, yurei, and everyone is under threat. Chiyoko of the Koi clan leads this band of 7 warriors that have to put aside their differences, as they don't really get along, and come together in order to stop this threat. Now, I do enjoy the art for the book. I really feel that it captures the feel of the game. The characters do feel thematic to the different tribes and, clans. I said tribes. Do feel very thematic. I love the fact that that clan element is well implemented into the story and that everyone feels very unique. Now, one of the large downsides I would say is that you've seen this story before. There are the clans getting together. So, this kind of reminds me of Magnificent Seven, whereas you've got all of these people coming together despite their differences, which they must put aside. Now, in this case, it feels a little bit more stereotypical where you've got enemies that must rise above their differences to fight a common foe. So that all really plays okay. I don't really love the story. I find that the characters are a little bit underdeveloped. It does feel that because the world of Rising Sun is very much more a board game, you don't have really any distinct characters. This is a competitive game where it's clan versus clan, that the writers were struggling to really come up with a story. Now, the idea of the kami, which are a big part of Rising Sun, disappearing, very cool. The idea of heroes of each clan, pretty cool. But other than that, I feel like you're really getting to the stereotypical generic plot for a comic book. Now, as this wasn't originally included as part of the Kickstarter, this was added later on. I do feel that the story suffers and that this book suffers overall. It is the thinnest of all the books and clearly the one that had the least amount of time put into it. Now, I do feel that Zombicide, whether it's modern, Invader, even Cthulhu Death May Die, do have some more background to pull from. The modern settings and just the source material in general, or similar types of source material that is out there in the case of Zombicide, do let you mine things for richer story elements. Also, all of the characters do have a little bit of their own backstory, so it's a lot easier to take those characters and plug them into a story. Here, the writers were tasked with coming up with stuff from scratch, and while I feel that they did an okay job, it's really just okay. I don't feel like I'm brought into the world of Rising Sun, and I don't feel that this comic book really expands the world of Rising Sun. It's trying to show us really a different section of it, but it still doesn't feel like a living, breathing world. Now, part of that is some of the problems that the board game itself has. There are some issues that were pointed out during the Kickstarter with kamis being chosen that actually weren't real Japanese gods because they were just pulled off of Wikipedia. So that cultural problem, while it does feel fairly present in this, especially when you look at the authors, there's no one that really has a Japanese background. It doesn't necessarily hinder the story, but you're very much getting a stereotypical story, as I said, like the Magnificent Seven, except where people are butting heads a lot more in a Japanese skin. So that's really all I have to say about it without getting into spoilers. Overall, my thoughts over this are not It's not terrible, it's not great, it's just average. I don't really think you need to pick this up unless you're a huge Rising Sun fan. For someone that doesn't know the board game world, likes Japanese anime like myself, or just Asian-themed storylines, you could pass on this one. It's really not for you. All right, so getting into spoilers. I gotta say, this book is dull, it's stereotypical, like you can see some of the plot coming a mile away, and it's just not all that interesting. So the book opens up with our 7 heroes engaged in combat with a dragon. One of the heroes, Jun of the Turtle Clan, gets injured, and from that point on, there is a lot of conflict with the group because they don't feel that Chiyoko of the Koi Clan is really up for leadership. Now, unfortunately, we really don't get any backstories of these characters. We really are just going off the attitudes and how they're played during the story. What does happen is that Jun does bind the team together because of some things that do go on, and that is actually key to the story because he's the one that breaks it apart. It's really telegraphed early on that there's going to be a traitor, and it's fairly easy to figure out that it's going to be Jun. He's the guy that brings the team together. He's the one that breaks them apart. You've got Takara, who is your stereotypical big bruising character. Doesn't like Chiyoko, but then comes to see her as an ally. So really what's going on in the story is, the team is fighting. There's a lot of friction. One of the characters dies. The character from the Dragonfly Clan, Hotaru, who was actually a really cool character, dies to the Yurei. And well, that was a point that really questions Chiyoko's leadership. It does also bring the team together, but there's really, as I mentioned earlier in the non-spoiler section, there's nothing new here. You can see a lot of this coming a mile away. The idea that there's a demon that has captured the communists threatening the land is pretty cool, but none of it's really played into. We don't know why this demon's here. We know that Jun has something to do with it, but why does he have something to do with it? Why does he want to kill people and become the daimyo, like the overlord of everyone? And why does he want to stop the kami from supporting the clans? It's really surface level. Nothing is well developed. This really is just a story of 7 characters going on an adventure, and maybe we'll see them later if this book sells well. And quite frankly, I don't think this is going to sell well. This was an add-on to the comics campaign. This was added later on into the game. You do get some extras, but there was no extra miniatures, so it does feel like this is an afterthought. The story feels like it's an afterthought as well. It's a thinner book, as I already mentioned, but does feel like the writers are trying to get to a deadline. Overall, you've read this story before. You've seen it done better. There's nothing new here. This is very much a hard pass for me. I will be letting this go from the collection. I don't think I'll be following any more Rising Sun books. There's nothing about this that really brings the world of Rising Sun to life, although I do think there's a lot of potential there. The theme is really cool, and the version of Japan that they're trying to create has been interesting, but none of that comes through in this basic retelling of Magnificent Seven. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on Rising Sun. I'm going to go to my score right now. So this score is for everyone. If you skipped ahead without the spoilers, I'm going to try to give this a nice summary without talking about everything. I'm going to give this book a 5. It is adequate, does what it wants to do. It's got some nice art. If the art wasn't very good, I'd give it a lower score, but this isn't really a great comic book. It feels like it was the add-on and afterthought of the comics campaign just to take advantage of the Rising Sun theme, and that's all there really is to say about that. So there's my score. Don't pick this up. Let it go. Take a look at the Zombicide books or the Cthulhu Death Might Die books. Also, there will be a review coming for those comic books in the near future on the channel. You'll be able to find the links to those comic book reviews when they're out down below in the video description. So what time is it then? Well, it's time to remind you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that YouTube will let you know when our next video is released. And then also down below in the video description, you can find links to all of our social media feeds: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you'd like to see pictures of me playing Rising Sun or any of the other CMON games, also pictures of me playing with Julie, they'll be down below in those feeds. There's also a link to multizone.ca, a great Canadian game store. If you're looking for any CMON games, you're trying to back any CMON Kickstarters, check them out. Also, click that link. It'll take you to the website and you'll get 10% off your next purchase. It's also a great way to support the channel because a portion of that purchase is returned to us. And now popping up in front of me are going to be links to some of our previously released videos. Over here will be our most recent release. And then over here eventually will be our review, of the Zombicide comic book. And then you'll see the other comic books come from there. And with that being said, don't forget, keep reading comic books, and most importantly, keep playing games.